popcorn is on me.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Hello, welcome back to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, and back. And this time it's back really quickly. Ian Seabrook. We had such a great time when we recorded the first episode. Talking about the film Last Breath. We said, can you stick around? Let's get another one knocked out. Thomas Manning joining us as well. And we have so much to talk about. And we covered a lot of things relating to Last Breath, the Woody Harrelson film based on the 2019 documentary of the same name. The event took place in 2012. Check out the documentary. Check out the film as well. But Thomas, we wanted to talk about a lot of other things too with Ian. And before we went on the air, there were quite a few other things that were going on. I'm like, I wish we'd had this for the show. But Thomas, dive in with the questions you've got to ask, man.
Yeah, so there's an incredible documentary you worked on a few years ago, The Rescue, directed by Jimmy Chin and Elizabeth Chai Vassarelli. And, within this film, this documentary, you basically recreated, there were fictional dramatic recreations of what actually transpired with the cave rescue in Thailand. So I'm really curious to hear just kind of about your starting point there and figuring out how to envision a narrative, fictional recreation of something that actually took place that we don't necessarily have footage of.
Yeah, that was the main issue. Was they had all the footage of. When I say all the footage, all the footage that they got from the Thai Navy SEALs was released very, very late in their shooting schedule. And it should be noted that the directors were not the original directors on the project. They replaced the original director, and because I guess they had a first look contract with National Geographic based on the Academy Award they won, and multiple awards they won for Free Solo. How did I get brought to the project? Is probably one thing you're wondering. Is a good friend of mine is the former American alpinist Mark Twight. He was an alpinist in the mid 1980s, and sort of had a punk rock sort of ethos towards alpine style climbing, which means you don't go up with a lot of equipment or supplemental oxygen. One of his climbing partners was a very dear man named Scott Backies from Minneapolis. Scott is because in the climbing community, they all know each other. And so Scott is good friends with Jimmy Chin. And so Scott and Jimmy were talking, and then Scott mentioned me to Jimmy, and then so Jimmy got a hold of me, and then that's kind of how that whole thing happened. So because he knew they needed, there was some underwater stuff they had to do, and he didn't know anybody who did it. So and I think this was, Free Solo is, they knew Alex Honnold, and so I suppose maybe that's their documentary on him. There was a known area there because they already knew Alex, whereas this was sort of there was a lot of things about the reconstruction of the rescue that they were not really privy to, just not being narrative filmmakers per se. So I did about a 2-month prep over in the UK. And I remember either someone from National Geographic or the production company was like, why does he have to be there that long? I thought, well, I worked 7 days a week. I worked every single day on the prep, and there were several sources. I got a barrage of sources, and the best source was the Thai PBS documentary on the rescue. And of course, it was very Thai-centric. It was not focused on the British or the Finnish or the Australians or anything. So it was good. And so then I had to, I had to pretty much organize the set construction. The plan was to build 60 feet of continuous caves so that we could have a tunnel system and it was the real rescue divers were going to do the work. We didn't hire any stunt people or actors. They were going to play themselves. And so initially there was a lot of hesitation from them regarding that, and understandably so, because you've got a retired firefighter from Coventry. You've got an IT guy who's like, I'm not an actor, I'm a rescue guy. And even that, don't call me that kind of thing. So part of this 2 month prep period was to get to know them and to talk to them on the phone and to reassure them that they would not be portrayed in any kind of way that was detrimental to their character. I told them exactly how I was planning on photographing them, and they and they began to trust me. So that was necessary, instead of just popping in saying, right, we'll put you over there, we're gonna put the camera here, and it just wouldn't have worked. So we had to construct the cave and set, and then we had to make sure that all of their equipment was accurate. Not dissimilar from Last Breath, but we had to make sure that all their equipment was accurate for that time in the rescue. Because if you look at because it had to be the same footage. If there's documentary footage of them entering the cave system, which of course we're not going to shoot with all the Thai military everywhere, then what they have on has to be what they have on in the cave. And like, oh, it's a red helmet, oh, it's a blue helmet. And I had to know what chamber we were working in, what rescue day, what timeline day. There's a slate that I had made up, and it gave the editor to register what point during that whole escapade, what day we were on physically, because it's very difficult to keep track of all these details. We did have one of the divers who was kind of our consultant, and he'd say, this equipment, this line, they brought a lot of their own stuff in, but then we had to also source different things. And then the lights that they had on their helmets, we had to make them movie-ish, put diffusion in there or neutral density because they were too bright. And so, again, same thing. We shot some tests, and you learn a lot shooting tests. Greg Fraser, the great cinematographer who did, the Dune pictures and Batman, which is a beautiful picture. He's a major fan of multiple forms of testing. And I think any DP does that, but he does a lot. And so he says, and I think it's really smart, because you'll know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And maybe on the day you can pull something out of your hat and say, let's try this, because I know what it's going to look like, instead of like, let's try it. And then you look back and like, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. But it was very intensive prep time. And then the original plan for that from the original director, I've said original too many times, but was to animate the sequence. And to me, when I see that in a documentary, I kind of think it's a bit of a cop-out, because I also just get disinterested. There's there's a documentary called Gimme Danger, right? Jim Jarmusch, one of my favorite directors, and the Stooges, one of my favorite bands. And I really didn't like the documentary because there's so much animation in it. I thought this is going to be amazing, and then of course I was very disappointed. That's just my personal opinion. So my take on animation, even though the animation that was done for the rescue initially was this sort of neo-Russian, really kind of hard lines, interesting animation, and the colors and stuff were interesting. It kind of looked a little bit like an acid trip, and so and Jimmy was sort of like, well, can we take small elements of that, and can we maybe put that into the soup that we're creating here? But it was a big challenge, and getting silica sand that was because the cave system, if we were to shoot in the real cave system, if it was flooded, you wouldn't be able to go in there anyway. But it was basically the color of coffee creamer in water, and you couldn't see in front of your face. So if you're going to photograph that, no one's going to see anything. You're going to, we'll do it on a GoPro. Okay, great. So you can't see anything. So then the audience is completely confused. So then you do have to do recreations, and you do have to do them in clear water, but then you can muss the water up a bit, right? So we had to have silica. There's a broccoli mixture that we blended to have the particulate a little bit gloopy, as it were. And then a digital effects company came in and kind of augmented a little bit. I didn't really care for what they did, but and again, it's sort of like, this has happened on a few films where you do your best to make this as practical as possible, and then a company will come in and do their finishing touches. And so during the grading process, they'll look, I'm like, what is this? Like, this is not how I shot this at all. This looks like a double exposure, or this looks like some other show that's like, CSI Miami is now overlaced over our work, and it just looks really weird. So, if I'm in the grading process, which I always try to be, if I'm not busy on some other show, I will dial that stuff down to make it. It's not making it about me. It's all about the picture. Like I'm a slave to the picture to make the picture as best as it can. And the reception of the rescue, I guess the best compliment I ever got on that picture was it premiered at TIFF in Toronto, and the film was screened in an IMAX Omnimax screen. And again, that's the reason why we shot it on the Mini LF, with a larger sensor that it could be blown up if there was an IMAX print made. And Chai said, yeah, we're going to do an IMAX print, just like Free Solo, even though Free Solo is absolutely not captured with IMAX cameras. So after the screening, there was a Q&A. And one of the people said, I overheard you say something about recreations. Can you tell me what the recreations were? And I was like, bingo.
Yep.
That's the goal. It's not like, hey, that work looked amazing. It's like, you didn't even notice. That's the goal.
Wow.
Because it's not about my work. It's about the film. It's about making it look like you're watching the rescue of those children, and you are completely gripped on what's happening and meshed in with music and the way that Bob Eisenhart, the wonderful editor, cut it. That is why the film works the way it does. It's not all talking heads. If it's all talking heads, that's a different kind of film. And I don't think that it would have connected with people. So they were presented with this problem. You had to have recreations done, and they had to be done so that you couldn't tell that they were recreations. Movie people will go, Joel Cohen, it was amazing. He talked to Jimmy about it, and he goes, so were you in the water with the camera, Jimmy? And Jimmy goes, well, no, we had this guy. Well, who was the guy? He's like, well, this guy Ian. I'm like, yeah, and so it was like, oh, now Joel Cohen knows who I am. Great. So, but he obviously can, a filmmaker can tell. Okay, well, you could tell that you didn't have miles of cave that you could see, and I guess, and there were various adaptations of that story made. Ron Howard did one, and then there was a Netflix series where I saw that they had lit up entire sections of the cave. Like, I just thought, well, it never looked like that. But again, it's sort of like Last Breath. Like, well, it wasn't like that, or the diving bell is too big, or those helmets aren't accurate. It's like, well, okay, so there's got to be some suspension of disbelief, and it's a narrative project. It's a narrative undertaking of a real life event. So
Yeah. Well, you mentioned acid trip, and you had a recent acid trip a few years ago when you had a chance to go to the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards, and you received an award for Best Cinematography for that film. So talk about the experience of being recognized for your work on a stage like that, surrounded by others who were involved in your craft as well.
It was a unique experience. I'd never really been privy to the whole awards circuit thing. In fact, I think I was otherwise engaged with something else, and somebody got a hold of me and said, "Wow, congratulations!" I was like, "What?" You kind of like shake all the cobwebs off, and then it kept happening because after the Critics' Choice Award, so that was in New York, and we were all sitting at a table, and then when it my heart was just racing when they show everybody's. I still have it on my phone. I was videoing it, and you can see when they finish showing all the clips of all the things that are nominated. I quickly just put the phone down because you're waiting. Everybody else in the room, like the guys from The Alpinist, were also sitting there waiting with bated breath. And so when it was announced, I was. I just basically got up and went to the stage, and Questlove gave me the award, and it was amazing because I really am a big fan of his. And I thanked everybody and my crew by name, and there was a few times that just Chai and Jimmy were at this table, and he would yell things out like correcting me, of course, but as she does. But the rescue was nominated for a whole bunch of things, and Summer of Soul really, really knocked it out of the park, I think, that year. And I got to tell you, one of the things that was really wonderful that I remember was after the awards were finished and we were all going to go to this sort of after party kind of gathering. I felt a pat on a rubbing on my back, and I turned, and this woman said to me, congratulations. And it was Barbara Koppel. And I don't know if you know who Barbara Koppel is, but she directed Harlan County, USA, amongst a billion other documentaries, and she's an incredible filmmaker. And so for her to take a moment to actually come over and say something, I was flabbergasted. I was like, of course you say thank you, but you're just like, oh my God. So, and then I think we got nominated for a Cinema Eye Honors, which I think is like the documentary community's sort of Oscars. And And then we ended up we ended up being awarded the inaugural American Cinematheque Tribute to the Crafts, and that was a collection of film artisans who there's Dune, No Time to Die, House of Gucci. I can't remember what else was around that time, but we were all we all were at the Aero Theater in Los Angeles. And when I looked at who the board of governors were for the American Cinematheque, and I saw that Michael Mann was one of them, I was like, oh my God, he's going to be there. Maybe he's going to give me the award. I can't believe it. And hopefully he doesn't, because I'll just be like, oh my God. He'd be like, dude, just take the award and shut up and get on the award. But that didn't happen. He wasn't there, but yeah, it was still amazing. And then, of course, afterwards, I had a whole group of people that I hadn't seen for a while, and just other people from the military that came up just to talk about stuff because they'd seen the rescue and they were very interested. And it was really, really lovely community full of people. And there's some guys there from Frontline that had won awards. And even when we went to the Emmy Awards, and the rescue won Best Current Affairs Documentary, I believe. A couple of, I think Jimmy and Shai got the directing award. I can't remember. I mean, it was heavily awarded, and it just was a weird, well, you say acid trip, but it was just like, I'm just not used to that kind of thing. I don't do this kind of work for those kinds of accolades. You do the work because you are passionate about it and you love it. And it's not about you, it's about the project and making the film the best it can be. And if your work is recognized, then that's a total bonus. So I wasn't really prepared for any of that. I was like, what's happening?
Well, I love it, and well deserved, Ian Seabrook, our guest right here on Meet Me at the Movies. We're going to take a quick intermission. Thomas Manning and I will be right back with more talking about film with Ian Seabrook. Stick around.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick? Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a...
Hello, welcome back to Meet Me in the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, hanging out with Thomas Manning, and we are talking Ian Seabrook about films. This is a part 2. Actually, I guess you could say part 3 or 4. We talked to Ian several times over the years, but this is... But we're just glad to have you back, man. It's always wonderful to chat, and we have more fun even between the breaks and when we're off camera as well. So thanks for joining us. And Thomas, I'll let you dive in with the next question, buddy.
Yeah. So Ian, you've worked on a couple of Lucasfilm projects over the past few years. We talked about Dial of Destiny, but also you worked on the Disney Plus Obi-Wan Kenobi series. So I just imagine that when you're approaching something with such a legacy as Star Wars, Indiana Jones, obviously you're a true professional, and there are certain emotions you probably have to just totally set aside. But are those emotions hanging over you at the beginning of the project at all, or does that challenge? Is that something that you really just have to just set aside? I'm just really interested to hear about your mindset there.
It's a very good question, because when you're asked to contribute to, in a cinema legacy like Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, I remember watching that film in the cinema, and it was, I watched it several times before I started working on it. But, I even put little touches when I made my underwater slate. I put the font on the slate is the same font of the very opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm not sure whatever that font is, and somebody caught it. They're like, yeah, I saw your indie font, really cool, or whatever. And so I make those small little touches because I know Spielberg's looking at the dailies. I know that Mangold's watching the dailies. They're all looking at this stuff. So, and I don't do it for brownie points or anything. I do it because that illustrates that I'm as interested as they are in the project, and I'm also a fan of the films. And so with Obi-Wan Kenobi, I recall that because we were shooting Indiana Jones at the same time, and then the line producer said, I need to speak with you. I said, okay. So I went into his office, and he goes, close the door. And I was like, oh no. And he goes, have a seat. And I was like, oh, this is it. I'm getting the boot. And he's like, so we're going to be doing Obi-Wan Kenobi on the weekend, and I've already called your agent, and the deal's already done. I'm like, what? Same thing as like the awards and the rescue. What? And so it's like, okay, let's go over to the costume. Let's go over to the costume department now, and we'll talk to Joanna Johnson, who did Amistad and a bunch of other Spielberg pictures and the third Indiana Jones film, and she's legendary costume designer. So there I am working with her, and she's like, well, what do you think about this for the Emperor? This is going to be the Emperor's cloak, and here's some jewelry things at the necklace or a bandana, whatever the Emperor is wearing. And so and of course you're looking around, and there's all the giant Nazi paraphernalia because of the beginning of the Dial of Destiny, and the first thing I said was, how did they travel with this stuff? Like, did they have it under lock and key, or on the carnet was it like Nazi flags, Nazi whatever uniforms? Anyway, there was a ton of them in there, and I was just like, yeesh, because that's where all there's giant, massive building. It's got all nothing but wardrobes. So there we are talking about the Emperor, and so for Obi-Wan Kenobi, it was a unique situation in that they were going to do a live direct link up with the director in Los Angeles and then myself in the United Kingdom. And we were going to be shooting at the same time. So she was going to be directing via a live link up. So she had a monitor and I guess a camera was aimed at the set, and the original actor who played the Emperor, Ian, I forget his last name. And, he came out in his wardrobe, and then I had to match reference footage between him and Lord Vader having a meeting, and it was all motion control. Everything had to be, perfect. And we did it on the weekend while the Indiana Jones crew was, on a break, but I used all the same main unit crew that they were working on the Dial of Destiny. So David Sinfield, the gaffer, and the key grip. So, it was interesting because Deborah Chow was the director, and it was very early in the morning when she was doing this, but that was another unique experience because I've never experienced that before. We did wrap in under the allotted time that I was only, you have to get all of this work done in 8 hours or 16 hours or over the next 2 days or whatever the assignment was. And so I was very, very prepared. The night prior, I watched every single Star Wars film with the Emperor in it, and I also watched The Exorcist because I utilized that shot at the very end where Father Karras comes up, and there's that piece of light that's just on his eyes, because that's usually how the Emperor has been lit in most of these films. So it's the same thing. You have to do it the way that it's been done. You can't go, well, I'm going to go all creative and put a green light on him this time. You're like, what are you doing? So it had to follow the tradition, The same thing when you're shooting Harrison Ford, the camera angles that Spielberg used, or the way that he gets the camera right in there. We needed to not necessarily mimic that, but pay homage to that and recognize that the films all were directed by Spielberg, apart from the last one, because he ended up, I think, going to do The Fabelmans instead, which is why Mangold ended up taking over. But so it was essentially still his project. We still had to make sure that it all looked the same. So with Obi-Wan Kenobi, it was the same thing. You are part of the Star Wars arsenal. You have to honor the fact that there's millions of fans who are, oh my God, it's the Emperor. And half the time I couldn't believe that. I'm like, oh geez, but I have to shut that part of my brain off, and I just have to.
Right.
It's like sir, is it possible? Can you rotate your body a little bit this way or whatever, as opposed to like, Lord Emperor Vader or whatever. Like you just tell him to do it, and it's. But yeah, you do have to, and I've worked on this film once where we got a big lecture from the AD. Okay, so the lead actor's coming in. I don't want anybody going up and asking for an autograph or saying I loved you in this. And everyone was professional. And then when we started shooting, the production designer walked up and said, "Would you sign my Laserdisc?" Well, Laserdisc. Now I'm dating myself, but the guy, he obviously wasn't at the meeting, right? So, and I kind of went up to the AD and I said, "Why would you say that? Like, why do you like? I've worked with so many." Movie stars, and you're working with them. You don't like ask them all these questions or get them to sign things or do photographs. Or, we all know that we don't do this. And he's like, yeah, but there's always going to be one person who does it. So, yeah. But it was interesting with Star Wars stuff. The security is up the wazoo, and I really. You sign all of your NDAs, and you're not supposed to talk about things, and you're not supposed to show photographs, and I don't do any of that. I know that this project is already passed and everybody's seen it and stuff, but and I'm not really revealing anything either. But it's just it was a great honor, and also in the Lucasfilm office they have a lot of photographs all over the walls of kind of it's interesting photography of the Star Wars films that were being made, and it's photographs I've never seen. But then again, it's not like I'm not a fanboy with that stuff. I was when I saw the films, but I'm not really a big Star Wars. If it was an Abyss movie, then it'd be different.
Oh, man. Ian Seabrook, you have been marvelous, man. I am looking forward to the next time that we get a chance to chat more, because Thomas and I still have about 50 questions that we didn't get to, so we're going to definitely have you back. Ian Seabrook, so you have a website, and people can check out some of your reels as well. What's the website?
Yeah, it's dorsalfin.net.
All right. Well, we will make sure we share that with our viewers. And again, man, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thomas Manning, as always, you are insightful with your questions, and just appreciate you as well. For all of our cast and crew and for the audience, we appreciate you as well. Until next time, for Meet Me in the Movies on C19 TV, I'm Noel T. Manning II, and that's a wrap.
Many films to view until we meet again. Next time we see you, we'll gladly fill you in. We'll tell about the happy and the sad ones. We'll talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Many films to view till we meet again.
Hi, I'm Nikki Bliss Carroll, your host for Cleveland Connections, the show that explores what's happening at Cleveland Community College. Join us as we sit down with members of faculty and staff to discuss programs of study, upcoming events, and other exciting campus news. We'll have a new show for you each month on C19 TV, or you can stream us online at c19.tv. Tune in and connect with Cleveland Community College on Cleveland Connections.
Hi, I'm Shara Miller, the host of Artworks. Each month we bring to you wonderful, talented artists from here in Cleveland County and the region. We have artists, we have potters, we have painters, we have musicians, we have actors. We just have wonderful artists that come to you and tell you about all that they're doing, their creativity, what inspires them. Join me here on Artworks each month on C19. You can also watch us online at c19.tv.